I'm Kieran Conway and you're watching Sporting Icons.
The IBF featherweight world champion Josh Warrington has now left Frank Warren and teamed up with Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, Sky Sports and DAZN. Basically, he's now returned home. This is where Josh Warrington was for most of his career up until he then jumped ship when he wasn't being given the opportunities that he felt that he wanted. Went to Frank Warren. Frank Warren then guided him to a world title, guided him and helped him put on shows at Ellen Road. You know, this is a football stadium of Leeds United, Josh Warrington's home club, plus many other things, and of course put him on pay-per-view and what have you. And now Josh Warrington has jumped ship back to Eddie Hearn. Now, reasons for this one, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I could speculate, and my speculation would probably go along the lines of Frank Warren couldn't deliver him the kind of unifications, the big fights, the money fights that Josh Warrington desired. Maybe that's what it is, and I think that's probably why Billy Joe Saunders left to Frank Warren as well. It's not that they have a personal problem with Frank. I don't really know what's going on over there. But I do feel bad for Frank Warren because at the end of the day, he did build up Billy Joe Saunders. He did build up Josh Warrington, and now they've gone over to Eddie Hearn. Tyson Fury, of course, he come back into boxing, had a couple of mediocre fights here in the UK, and then just buggered off over to America for his next 5 fights. So essentially, Frank Warren isn't really, well, he is on paper his promoter, but he's not really. Bob Arum is more his promoter because he's stateside. So Frank Warren is kind of left swinging in the wind, really, isn't he? I mean, he's got Daniel Dubois. I know Daniel Dubois has now signed a 5-year contract with Frank Warren, which I don't agree with. I think that any fighter out there, you should never ever put all your eggs in one basket for that amount of time. I don't care who you are or what it is that your promoter is doing for you. Loyalty is great, but loyalty will only pay the bills for so long. Eventually, you're going to want the big fights, the super fights, the big money fights. That's what you're going to want to do. So you should always have your options open. That's my only advice for any kind of fighters. But hey, listen, good luck to Daniel Dubois. But of course, when you look at Frank Warren's stable now, you do have to wonder what's going on. Because what I don't want everybody on one side of the street. Okay, we're going to use the street analogy. I don't want everybody on Matchroom Boxing, Sky Sports and what have you, and very little to no competition coming from Frank Warren, Queensberry Promotions, and of course BT Sport. The more that Frank Warren that does, the more Eddie Hearn also has to do to keep the gap the way that it is. Because if everybody goes over to Matchroom, complacency could kick in. Don't get me wrong, I think that Eddie Hearn, he's always going to want to put on good shows. He's always going to want to put on fight nights to excite the fans. So I don't think that he'll slip into the mould of, dare I say, what Frank Warren done a few years ago when Barry Hearn left, where me and many boxing fans kind of fell out of boxing for a while because we just weren't really interested because Frank Warren wasn't putting on the kind of fight nights that we wanted to see. So I don't want to see that from Matchroom. As I said, I don't think that would really happen, but I'd rather not risk it. So the more that Frank Warren does, the more pressure it puts on Eddie Hearn to keep on putting on good shows. That's pretty much how I see it. I don't want one organisation to monopolise. That's pretty much what it is I'm trying to say. So Josh Warrington going back to Eddie Hearn, it is a bit of a surprise, to be honest with you. I wasn't too sure if Josh Warrington and Eddie Hearn even had a good relationship anymore. I wasn't too sure about that, but anyway, it is what it is, and I'm sure Eddie Hearn, he can get him the big fights, he can get him the big money and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose we really have to wait and see what happens. But so far, Eddie Hearn hasn't really delivered for Billy Joe Saunders yet. But of course, they are holding out for the Canelo one, but which one is Eddie Hearn really prioritising for Canelo? Is he trying to push for Billy Joe or Callum Smith, or is it just not anything to do with him? I don't know. Personally, I think that Eddie Hearn should make a bit of a push on Billy Joe versus Triple G. Been waiting for that fight for a hell of a long time, yet we're hearing nothing about it. Personally, I don't particularly want to be seeing Billy Joe versus Callum Smith. I ain't going to lie. I'd rather see that those two guys go unify against somebody else, like a Caleb Plant, for example, and then come back to the table, and maybe, hopefully, these guys fight against each other for undisputed in a big fight. But for now, if Billy Joe can't get Canelo, go get Triple G. Just get that fight done. I don't know how difficult it could be. They're both under the same umbrella of DAZN in that, so get cracking with that one. And similar kind of thing with Josh Warrington now. What kind of big fights is he going to get that Frank Warren couldn't have got? I don't know. I mean, is this the end of the road for Frank Warren? I don't know. I mean, wasn't Frank Warren and BT Sports supposed to have this big press conference in January? I mean, did that even happen? If it did happen, I totally missed it, where they're meant to be announcing some huge, huge news. Listen, I don't know. I mean, luckily for Frank, he still got Daniel Dubois. But what if Joe Joyce beats Daniel Dubois? What happens then? Anthony Yarde, of course, he lost to Sergey Kovalev. He come back last weekend as a tune-up fight. The reason being because the WBO light heavyweight title is vacant, and no fighter who had a loss previously can fight for it. So now he fought against an absolute bum, and so now he's got a win. So now he can compete for that world title. Maybe that's the reason why. Well, in fact, I'm pretty sure that's the reason why. But if Anthony Yarde can't live up to expectation, if he fights for that world title against somebody really good and gets done, where does Frank Warren go? What does he do? Anyway, drop your thoughts below about it. Press conference tomorrow with Eddie Hearn and Josh Warrington, 12:30 UK time. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, catch you all on the next video.